Welcome to this tutorial video. The topic of this tutorial video is RESTful API testing or web service testing or web API testing. That is the topic of this tutorial video. Welcome to this tutorial video. So I will discuss about these topics and I will give hands-on example wherever applicable. So I will explain what is RESTful API and I will make a RESTful API call in UFT as a user, as an end user or consumer or as a manual tester. How we can make a REST API call that I will give hands-on. I will also explain what is API testing, how we can do manual API testing, also how we can automate a test with parameterization and checkpoints. So these are the topics of this tutorial video. So first one is what is RESTful API. What is RESTful API? So first I need to know what is API. API means Application Programming Interface. It is an interface where one software application can interact with another one. Application Programming Interface. This interface is invisible interface. I have given a name to this interface, Application Programming Interface, that is invisible robot. Invisible robot. I have given this name, invisible robot, or I can also say virtual robot. Virtual robot. So this is an invisible robot. The reason it is invisible because we as an end user or as a consumer cannot install this API on our computer. We can use client. We can use client like UFT or SOAP UI, REST API or Postman. These are client, or Swagger. These are client where we can prepare the request and then send the request to the API to access data or functionality in a system. So since API is an invisible interface, for example, if it is mobile application, if it is mobile application, mobile app, it is graphical user interface, GUI, graphical user interface. If it is web application, web app, that is also graphical user interface. If it is Windows app, that is also a graphical user interface. Or we could have command line interface, CLI, tools, command line interfaces also we can have. So those interfaces, this is interface, this is interface, this is interface, this is also interface. So these interface we can see. Mobile app we can install in our phone and we can open it and see it. Web application we can launch the web browser like Google Chrome, Firefox, or Microsoft Edge and load the web pages. That is web app. And Windows app also we can start using this start, or we could have an image on the desktop and then click on the image and open it. So those interfaces we can see, but API is an interface that we cannot see. That's why I have given a name, that is invisible robot. We can only send requests to the API to access data or functionality in a system. So that is API. Now, if what is web service? Web service or web API? API, web service or web API? Web service or web API is a specific type of API that is designed to interact over a network, typically the internet. So that is the definition, that the communication we have, the request we send to the API from the client, those communication has to be over the internet, typically over the internet using HTTP or HTTPS method. So those are web service. So all web services are APIs, but not all APIs are web services. For an API, to claim that that API is web API or web service, there is one requirement that should match, that is the communication we will have that has to be over the internet. Now there are different types of web services. SOAP, RESTful, GraphQL, RPC, WebSocket, and few more. There are different types of web services or web APIs. These are examples. So RESTful, GraphQL, RPC, WebSocket. REST. REST means representational state transfer protocol. This is the name of a protocol. If a web service or web API use this particular protocol to communicate with the API, then that web service is called RESTful web service. Or RESTful web API. RESTful web service or RESTful web API. So that is the definition I have explained. What is RESTful API? So I'll be changing the color to green. That I have explained it. What is RESTful API? And RESTful API. RESTful API. So how RESTful API makes call? Now what is, one more thing, what is API call? API call. So when we send a request to the API from a client to access data or functionality, then that request to making the API perform some task if applicable and receiving the response, all these three together called an API call. An API call equal to request to API, making API perform task if applicable and receive response from API. So all these three, this is one, this is another one, and this is another one. All these three together called an API call. So when we send the request, we prepare the request in a client. We prepare the request in a client. Client could be UFT or any other tool. So when we prepare the request that we will send to API, we follow REST principles. We follow REST principles. And the REST principle is, so when we send request to RESTful API, we mainly send these properties. The REST principle is, these are the properties we have to send to the API from the client. So we have to send RESTful API endpoints, method types, which is also known as operation, and HTTP version, and request header and request body if applicable. So these are the properties we prepare in UFT and send from the UFT to the API. And sending this is following the RESTful principles. Now that I have explained what is RESTful API, now I will give hands-on how to make RESTful API call in HP API test. HP API test is a module of UFT. So this is what I will be explaining now. How to make API call, RESTful API call in HP API test. So I have in a VMware or in a virtual machine, I have UFT opened. I have UFT open. So I will first I will create a new API test. This is what I'm explaining. As an end user or as a consumer or as a consumer or as a customer. How we can use HP API test module of UFT to make the RESTful API call. And I will be using a sample API which comes with UFT. HP Unified Functional Testing. This is a mechanism that UFT gives us so that we can practice. This is a mechanism that UFT gave us so we can practice. In real time, we will send the request to the API, which will be in the main server, not on the local computer. Now, first I will create one API. API test. First I will create one API test in UFT. This is a module of UFT. API test is a module of UFT. UFT means Unified Functional Testing. So we have different options. I have chosen API test. I'll click on create. It is getting created. This is the API test in the Solution Explorer. This is the API test in the Canvas view. This is the toolbar. Once I click on the toolbar, I can see this. Now I will be entering H from here. I typed H here and entered the enter key from the keyboard. Press the enter key from the keyboard. This help came up. If I scroll down, I will see there are some endpoints are given. This is one endpoint, API endpoint. This is another API endpoint. Also mentioned the operation. This particular endpoint take these operations. So as a user or as an end user or as a customer, I will use this particular endpoint to get information from the API. When I send a request to the API saying that, hey API, give me the list of flights that travel from this location to that location. If it is plain text, I using this particular endpoint, I can tell API that, hey API, take this data and give me the list of flights available on this particular cities, from this city to that city. But if it is, since it is REST API, I will have to follow this principles. I'll have to follow this REST principle. REST principle means I will have to prepare these properties and send. So first I will create a RESTful web service. Here it says add REST services. If I put cursor here, I can see add REST services is written. So I will be clicking here. Clicked. It says new service. This is the default value selected here. So I will click here, add method. Clicked. This method got created, and this name I can rename it, but I will not be renaming it. I will leave as it is. This is the name came. Now I'll be clicking on OK. I clicked on OK, so here it came up. Now I will hold this and drag and drop into this test flow. Now that I have I dragged and dropped here, now this information came. If I click here in this method, if I click here and click here, you will see the color changes. The color of the circle changes. Now this color is yellow type thing. I actually do not know the actual name of this color, but it's look like yellow. The color has been changed. This is the yellow color. Once I click here, here the information I see that belongs to this particular HTTP request. If I click here, the information I see here that belongs to this particular method. If I click here, the color has been changed to yellow. The circle color has been changed to yellow. The information I see here that belongs to this particular test flow. Now if I click this request, HTTP request, the color has been changed to yellow. Now I will have to prepare this request, HTTP request. I have to prepare here, and then I will be sending it. First I need to prepare the request, and then I will sending it. So the first thing I need to prepare RESTful endpoint. This is what I will have to prepare. This is what I will have to prepare. RESTful endpoints I will have to prepare. So endpoint is nothing but URL. Endpoint is nothing but URL. The URL is, this is the endpoint, but this endpoint has two parameters. This is one parameter. This is one parameter. Let me copy this. Copy, and I'll put in a notepad. I put in a notepad. Now this one has two parameters. This is one parameter. This is one parameter, but I need the actual value. I need the actual value. Right now, I am preparing this RESTful API endpoint. I have collected the endpoint from this node, but this endpoint has parameters. This endpoint has parameters, so I will have to remove this parameter and put the actual value. I need two city name that is valid. I need two city names that is valid. So I have one Excel sheet where I have the list of valid cities. So I will be randomly choosing one. Let's say I will choose Portland. I choose this city and I paste it here. And I will choose another city. Maybe I will choose Sydney. Portland to Sydney. And I am giving here. So I prepared the actual endpoint. I prepared the actual endpoint. This is the actual endpoint, and I will copy again just to see. This is the endpoint or URL that has parameters, and this is the endpoint that has hard-coded value or actual value. Now I will be taking this endpoint. I copy this endpoint and going to this request, HTTP request. This is says URL. These are properties. These are properties. These are properties. Right now I'm working on API endpoint. API and endpoint is nothing but URL. So I have the actual URL that I copied. Now it is in the clipboard. Now I will be saving it. URL. I'm saving it. I mean pasting it. I pasted it. This is one thing. Second thing is this one is done. Preparing this particular property is done. The second property, this is method type, also known as operation. Method type, also known as operation. This is what I will prepare now. So method type, for this particular, whatever is in this row is for the same service, same web service. So this operation is get. For this particular endpoint, this endpoint takes this operation get. So I will be choosing get from this list. There are so many values. I'll be choosing get. And the version is 1.1. HTTP version is defaultly selected 1.1. Request header and body if applicable. So the HTTPS version is 1.1. That also I selected. HTTP version is 1.1. And if I go here, this doesn't require any header or body. This request, this particular endpoint, and this particular service doesn't require any header or body. Any header or body doesn't require. Therefore, this one is not applicable. Only these three applicable. So I have prepared this three. I prepared this three. Now I will send. When I send this, when I run the script will send this information to the API. Basically, a script is saying, hey API, take this information and tell me the list of flights that travels from this to city, Portland and Sydney. Let me see what API response. I will be running it. The script is running. I expand everything. I go to the request. First, I see what information I sent to the API. The invisible robot, what information I sent to that robot or the web API. So these are the information I sent. I sent the method type. I sent the endpoint version. These are the three information I sent. Now what the API gave me in response, if I go down, this is says, in response, first, normally we check HTTP status code and status description. Normally we check HTTP status code and description when we test as a tester, but as an end user or consumer, they need the actual data. So I'll be seeing what data it is showing. I'm clicking here. Now it is giving the list of flights that travels between those two places, Sydney and Portland. So I copy everything, Control C. I selected everything using Control A, then I Control C, so everything got copied. I close this one. I will be opening another notepad, paste everything, just to keep in my record. These are the flight information. Now, first one, as an end user or consumer, I have showed hands-on this particular service. Now the next service, this one. This is the next service. This one is for flight information. This is for flight information. Again, I'll have to prepare this. First, I'll be preparing endpoint. First, I'll prepare the endpoint. Endpoint means URL. I copy the URL. And paste here. Now this particular endpoint or this particular URL has a parameter. This is a parameter, but I need the actual URL, actual endpoint. So I copy everything again. And paste here. Now instead of this flight number, this is a parameter, I need the actual hard-coded value, which I will be collecting from here. There are flight numbers. This is one flight number. This is another flight number. This is another flight number. So I'm just randomly choosing this flight number. Copy. I choose this flight number and paste here. So I got this actual endpoint. Copy. Now if I go to this request again, I will change this one. Endpoint. I will change this one and I'll put this new one. And then I will choose the method type. This is what I will be choosing, method type. Method type, this is what I will be choosing. So method type is also get. Method type is get. Version 1.1. Version also I have chosen. So these three things I choose. And then request header and body. If I go to the service info, I see there is no request header or body. There is no request header or body. That means this one is not applicable. So I will make this API call, or I will send the request to the API using these three properties. 1, 2, 3. These three properties I will be using to make this call. This property, basically, when I run the script, basically I'm saying that, hey API, tell me the list, tell me the flight information where the flight number is. Tell me the flight information where flight number is this. Tell me the flight information where flight number is this. So let me see what happens. I run the script. The script will send the request to the API. API will validate and give me response. I expanded everything going to the API call. Now, first I see what information I sent. This is the method type that I sent, which is also known as operation. This is the endpoint I sent, this which is also known as URL, and the version. These are three information that I sent. Let me see what the API will give me in response. The status code is 200 and the status description is okay. And the response body, it is giving the information of this particular flight. I copy this and I will be pasting here for keeping in my for my reference. Now this one also done. This one also done. And the next one. This service I will use. This web service I will use. So I change the color to black, means everything is to be done. I need this particular URL or endpoint. So I'm copying this. I'll be pasting here. So this is what I'm working on right now. I'm working on this particular endpoint. This one is in progress, that I'm preparing the endpoint. So I copied and pasted the URL here, but it has 1, 2, 3 parameters, but I need the actual endpoint or actual URL with hard-coded value. That is what I need. But this endpoint or this URL has 3 parameters. With 3 parameters, this is one, this is another one, and this is another one. Now, if I just let me see what information I have. This is the flight information I have. Flight order. This is the flight information. I do not have flight. I do not have flight order information. So if I just take this URL, Control C, if I just take this URL, then it will give me the list of all flight orders. It will give me the list of all flight orders. Let me see what happens. This is the URL I will be using first. Copy. I'm going to the request, changing the endpoint. Method type also I'll be choosing a get, because here if I see method type is get and version 1.1. These are the 3 things I have taken: endpoint, method types, and version. And this one also doesn't require any body or header. Body or header doesn't require, so this one is optional. I will send a request based on these 3 properties, or I will make the API call based on these properties. So when I run this script, basically I'm saying, hey API, tell me the info of all the flights, because I didn't give any information of this. Just I put this, means give me a flight orders, all the flight orders. Let me see what happens. I run the script. The script is running. First, I see what request I sent. I sent these 3 properties. One is the method type, or which is also known as operation, and the endpoint, which is also known as URL, and the request HTTP version. These are the 3 information I sent. Now let me see what is the response. First, I see the status code. Status code is 200. Status description okay. Now, if I see, it give me all the orders which are present. All the orders which are present. So I'm copying everything. I copied everything and paste here for my reference. Now I will be taking this particular order. This particular order. And now I paste it here. Now I can get another URL or endpoint where I will have the hard-coded value. So this one, I'm copying this and this endpoint again, paste here. So this endpoint or this URL has 3 parameters, 1, 2, and 3. This one is date. So departure date I am copying from here. This is the date. And I will be pasting here. I pasted the hard-coded value. Initially, there was a parameter. Now I put the hard-coded value. And then customer name. Customer name, I'm copying. That is my name. I copied the customer name. And I will remove the parameter. This is the parameter that I will remove the parameter and put my name, which is hard-coded value. And also order number. Order number is 17. And I will remove this parameter and I will put the hard-coded value. Now I got the final endpoint. Copy. Control V from the keyboard, so it got pasted here. Now if I run the script, basically I am telling that, hey API, give me flight information where date is this, customer name is this, and order number is this. And API should give me this info in the response. Let me see what happens. Before that, I'm checking. I am sending the endpoint, method type, and version. Endpoint, method type, and version. These are the three properties: URL, method type, and the version. Now I'll be running it. A script is running. Let me see what information I sent. So I sent this method type. This is the endpoint that I sent. This is the endpoint that I sent. This is the endpoint, and this is the version that I sent. So these are the three information I sent to the API. Let me see what API is giving me in response. First, see the status code is 200, status description is okay. And I can see this particular information is given to me. I am pasting in this notepad for my reference. Now this one is done. Next one. Next service that I will use as a end user or customer. And that is this one. That is this particular service. This particular service. So this one, I need these things. I will be changing this to black. That means I need these properties. I need to prepare these properties and then I can send it. So first one I will prepare is the endpoint. RESTful API endpoint, which is also known as URL. This is the URL. This URL doesn't have any parameter, so I can directly use it. Since this URL doesn't have any parameter, this URL doesn't have any parameter. This URL doesn't have any parameter, so I can directly use. So I will be copying it and paste here. Second one is method type. Second one is the method type, also known as operation. This is what I will be preparing. This one I already prepared. This one I'm preparing, that is method type. So method type is post, post. So from this list, I will choose post, post. Version, I'm choosing 1.1. Version, I'm choosing 1.1. So these three I have chosen. Now request header and request body. This particular service, this particular web service has request header, also has request body. So first I will prepare the request header. Request header. This is request header, name and value. So I am choosing the name. Control V from the keyboard. So it got pasted here, and then value. Text XML. Pasted here. This one is header is done. Now I will prepare the body. This is the body. Now I will go here. This is the request body. Text is selected. I paste it here. This is an XML file. Now I will change the name to my name. MD Shahajada Imran. So I have changed the name. Date I will choose from the future. So I will say 2025 and I will say 1010. So from the future I have chosen one date. And flight number, this is the flight number is okay. And I will be choosing number of tickets. I will be taking 2. So these are the information. This is a one request body which is prepared in XML format. Now this one also done. Means these 4 things are prepared. All of these properties are prepared. Now if I run the script, basically I'm telling that, hey API, create a flight order for me where these are the information, the class name, my name, date, apartment, flight number, not apartment number, flight number, and then number of tickets. This information, please take this information and reserve a flight for me. That is what I have said. Post, the post means creating a new record to this server. So creating a new order into the server. So that is what this request in plain English or in plain text. Let me see. I will run it and see what happens. First, I will see what information I this is the body that I sent. And this is the information that I sent. So this is the method type. This is the endpoint that I sent, the version. Also, this is the body. In response, these are the information I sent to the API. Let me see what the API sent to me. First, I check the status code 200 and okay. 200 means everything is fine. And click here. It says the order number 18. So new order has been created where the order number is 18. I copy and paste here for the reference. Order number is 18. Now I use this particular web service as a end user or customer. Now I will be using this one, this particular web service that I will use as an end user or customer. So again, I change the color. Black means these are I'll prepare before I send the request or before I make the API call. First one I will prepare is the endpoint. So this one I'll prepare. So this is the endpoint. Copy. Paste it here. This endpoint or this URL has a parameter, but I cannot have a parameter in the endpoint. So I will remove this parameter and put the actual value. And this is order number. Order number is 18. Order number is 18. The most recent order that I have created as an end user or as a customer or as a consumer or as a consumer, the order I have created that has the order number 18. So I copy this order number and I will paste here. So I remove this parameter and put the hard-coded value instead of the parameter. Now I got the final endpoint. Copy. I remove everything from here. Also, I delete everything. And this is the properties. So endpoint. I removed this one and pasted this one, the latest endpoint. This is the endpoint. This is the endpoint I copied and pasted here. Now I will choose the method type. Method type is get. So I will be choosing get. And the version 1.1 also I choose. Endpoint, method type, and version. These three are prepared. And then header and body. This particular web service or web API doesn't require header or body. Therefore, this property is optional or not applicable. So I will be making this API call using these three properties. And these three properties are prepared here. 1, 2, 3. Now, if we run the script, basically I'm telling API that, hey API, give me flight order information where the order number is 18. Let me see flight. Basically, I'm by making this API call or by sending this request to the API or by running this particular script, I'm telling API that, hey API, tell me flight order information where the order number is 18. Let me see what happens. So I'm running it. First, I see what information I sent. I sent the method type, which is also known as operation, and then endpoint, and this version. Let me see what response. First, I will check the status code is 200. Description also, status description also okay, and the response body. This is the flight information. This is the flight information. Order number is 18. This is the flight information. I copy this flight information and I will paste here for my reference. Now I will use this particular endpoint as a end user or customer. As an end user or customer, I will use this particular endpoint. Web service, particular web service. Now first I will prepare the endpoint. This is what I will prepare, the endpoint. So this is the URL. Paste it here. This URL has one parameter, but I need the actual value. So I will remove this and I'll put the parameter number 18. Flight order 18. So this is the endpoint. I copy this endpoint. And here I am pasting again. I pasted the endpoint and then method type. This one is done. Now I will choose the method type. This is what I will choose. Let me see what is the method type. Method type is put, put. So I'm choosing put. And version I'm choosing 1.1. So I have chosen as put, and the version also I have chosen 1.1. These three things are chosen 1.1. Put. Now I will be checking if header and body. What are header and body? This particular web service or web API call, this particular web service has header, also has body. So I will add the header. Request header, name, pasted. I copied from here, and then paste it here. And now I will copy this and I will paste here. And so this one is done. Header is done. Now I will prepare the body. This is the body. This is the body. I copied the body. Now I will paste here. Control V from the keyboard. It got pasted here. Now I will be changing only the order number of tickets. Instead of 2 tickets, I will say 5 tickets. Instead of 2 tickets, I will say 5 tickets. 5 tickets. Initially, this is the original request where number of tickets is 2. And now I will update to 5 tickets. I will say I need more, somehow more people are going with me. So I need 5 tickets, not 2 tickets. So this is the body that I have prepared where I'm telling the API that only increase the ticket number from 2 to 5. So this one also done. The preparation of this body also done, means all these properties, all the four properties has been prepared. Here and here, all these are prepared. Now if I run the script, means I am sending an API call to the API saying that, hey API, update the order number 18 and increase the ticket number from 2 to 5. That is the request I'm sending, saying that, hey API, order number 18, please update the ticket number from 2 to 5. I need more people. Instead of 2 people, 5 people are going. So ticket number has to increase. That is what in plain text I would have tell if it was a real representative. But since it is a invisible robot and I am using REST principles for the communication, so I will be sending these properties. Now I'm running it. What information I sent first? I sent this information. This is the method type. This is the endpoint. And this is the header. And this is the body. These are the information I sent. These are the properties I have sent to the API. And let me see what API give me in response. First, I see the status code is 200. Description also okay. And this is the response body. It says true. True means the API is saying that I have increased the ticket number from 2 to 5. If it was a real human, real representative of the airline, then they would have said that I have successfully increased the ticket number from 2 to 5. But since this is API, invisible robot, so API is saying true in response. That means the ticket number has been increased from 2 to 5. Just to check, I will run this particular web service, or I will make this particular API call to get the information about this particular flight order. I'm removing everything. Order, I cannot have the hard-coded, I cannot have the parameter in the endpoint. So I need the hard-coded value. I put the hard-coded value. Method type is get. Version is 1.1. Now I will be running it. I do not need anything else. I'll be running it just to see the status of the order number 18. Basically, I'm saying that, hey, API, tell me the information about the order number 18. The reason I want to see, because I have increased the ticket number from 2 to 5. Is the 5 is displaying or showing in the response or not? If I directly go to the response, I'll see the order number is 5. It has been increased. I copy everything and paste here for my reference. So initially order number, the ticket number, initially the ticket number was 2. When the order number is 18, ticket number was 2. I have increased the ticket number to 5 and it is showing up now. It has been increased. Now I will be deleting the order number. So I will delete, if I use this endpoint, then I will be able to delete it. So I will copy the first, I change the color to black, so it is to do. Now this one I will prepare. I will use this particular endpoint as a customer or end user. So first thing I will prepare is the endpoint or API endpoint or URL. This is what I will prepare first. বাইরে ছিলাম, আমি একটা ইউটিউব ভিডিও করতেছি। I copied this particular URL, paste it here. Now this particular URL or API endpoint has one parameter. So I will remove the parameter and put the actual value, which is 18. Now I copy this endpoint. I paste the endpoint in this URL. So this one is done. Now I will choose the method type. This is what I will choose. Method type is delete. I will choose delete version 1.1. Version 1.1. So these three properties, these three properties I have prepared in this request, in the HTTP request. I have prepared these three properties, and this header and body, these two are optional. So I do not need these two. This header and body I do not need on this particular request. I only need these three. Now if I run the script, means when I make this API call or when I send this request, in plain English, what it means? It means I'm telling API that, hey API, delete the order number 18. Delete the order number 18. Let me see what happens, what API says to me in response. I'm telling API that, hey API, please delete the order number 18. If it was a real human, real representative, then that would be the communication language. But since this is RESTful API, we send a list of properties. Now let me see. First, I see what information I sent. I sent this method type. I sent this endpoint, and then version type. It means I'm telling API that, hey API, please delete the order number 18. Let me see what API is giving in response. So this is the status code 200, a status description, okay. And if it says true. True means order has been deleted. Order has been deleted. So I have showed how we can use UFT to make API call or to send request to the API as an end user or customer. So this one as an end user or customer, how we can use HP API test module of UFT to make API call that I have showed hands-on. So I'll be changing the color to green. That means I have explained hands-on in detail. Now, what is API testing? What is API testing? API testing is the process of verifying and validating the functionality, quality, performance, security, reliability of an API system. API is an invisible robot. We check if everything of that robot is working fine or not. Testing that is API testing. And the actual definition is API testing is the process of verifying and validating the quality, functionality, performance, security, and reliability of an API system. So that is the definition that I have given. Now I will show manual testing, how we can do manual testing in UFT. How we do manual testing. So UFT can play three roles. UFT can play three roles. One is the tool, consumer tool, consumer tool, manual testing tool, and automation testing tool. So UFT can play three roles. One is consumer tool, other one is manual testing tool, and automation testing tool. Now, how it is manual testing tool? How UFT, how the HP API module of UFT is manual testing tool. Since API, this particular interface is invisible interface, we need a third-party tool where we can prepare the request and send the request to the API, and when we receive the response from the API, that we can validate. We need a third-party tool, and UFT could be that third-party tool where we can prepare the request, send the request to the API, and manually validate. Now, if I prepare the request, API request, if I prepare the request and send the request, and when the API give the response to me, and I validate the response, I validate the response manually without using any checkpoints. That is manual testing. The reason I'm saying UFT is manual testing, because when the API give me response, if I validate the response manually, then that would be manual testing. If I do not put checkpoint, if the script is not parameterized, I just use UFT to prepare the request and send the request to the API. And when API give me response, I validate the response manually. Then that is manual testing. Now I will randomly choose one or two service and do the manual testing, positive, negative, and boundary testing. So first I will do positive testing. This is what I will Positive testing. Positive testing means I will go with the requirement. Whatever the requirement is there, I will go with the requirement. Let's say I will test this particular, I will test this particular web service, and I will go with the requirement. Requirement is when I give a valid departure city and valid arrival city, the API give me response with the list of flights. API give. So that is the requirement. So I will just make a request and manually check. So first I will prepare the endpoint, API endpoint. I'll prepare the endpoint. This URL has two parameters. So I will give two valid city names. Two valid city names I will be choosing. Let's say I choose London. It's a valid city name. Let's say another city, I will choose this one. So I have chosen departure city, arrival city. Now I will be making this request. So this is the endpoint. If I go here, this is what I'm preparing it. This is what I'm preparing. I'm preparing the endpoint. So I prepared the endpoint. I copy this. So I prepared the endpoint. I will be changing here I put the valid endpoint, and then method type I will be choosing get. If I go to the documentation, I will see the method type is get and version is 1.1. Version I have chosen 1.1. These are the three things I have chosen: endpoints, method types, and version. And this one is optional, not required. So these are the three properties. These are the three properties I will be sending. That is the requirement. Requirement is when I put a valid departure city and arrival city, and I send the request to the API saying that, hey, API, give me the list of flights that travels in this location. So API will give me a status code 200, give me a status description, okay, and also give me the list of flights that travel in these two cities. So that is the requirement. I prepared the request. Now I'm sending it. This is the method type. This is the endpoint and the version. These are the three things I sent to the API. And API give me response. I manually open this response and I looked at this response and I validate whether all has the same city or not. All the information that I have has the same city or a different city is there. All the things I checked, flight, all the flight info I have, that the city are same or not. I manually validate this response. That means I am manually tested. I did not put any checkpoint, I manually tested. So this is positive testing. This is positive testing. I changed it. Now I will do negative testing. Negative testing is going against the requirement. Going against the requirement. So for the same requirement, what if I give a wrong city? What if I give a wrong city, then what happens? The testing should fail. If it passes, then if it testing should fail, then only the API is working fine. I have the valid cities. If I go here, these are the valid cities. These are the valid cities where this particular airlines operate flights. Now, if I give a city which is not valid, then API should give me response saying that there is no flight that travels in that particular location. So this is negative testing. Just I'm going against the requirement. So I'm saying Dhaka city. Now this is the endpoint where if this is the endpoint where I choose departure city is London, arrival city is Dhaka. Now I will be copying the endpoint, and I will be changing this, paste it here. These are same get. This method is get and version. This one, if I run the script, that means I'm telling API that, hey API, give me the list of flights that operates from London to Dhaka. London to Dhaka. So let me see what happens. So if now I run the script, see what happens. This is negative testing going against the requirement. The information I send that this is the method type or operation. This is the endpoint where I have mentioned Dhaka, which is invalid city. And in the response, I see a status code is 400. It's not 200 anymore. Previously, it was 200, but now it is 400. And description is bad request. If I go to the body, and that is the expectation. And this is expectation that when I am giving a invalid city and telling API to give me the information about that invalid city, it will give me a status code 400 and a status description bad request, and also in the response body it will show this type of thing. That is the expectation, and it matches the expectation. And I manually tested. I manually open this response and validate it. So it is manual testing, negative testing. Negative testing. Now boundary testing. For boundary testing, I will use a different I will use a different I will use a different web service. Let me see which one I can use. I will use this one. This one I will use. It has the date. Date. There is a requirement that the date has to be at least 2 days in the future from today's date. There is a requirement. There is a requirement that is The requirement is date must be 2 days in the future. Date must be 2 days in the future. That is the requirement. Date must be 2 days in the future. So first, I divide the input domains into 3 groups. Boundary testing. First, this is boundary testing that I am doing. Boundary testing means I have to specify the boundary first. I have to divide the input domains into several groups and create test data for each boundary of each group. So this is the requirement. Requirements is date must be 2 days in the future. 2 days in the future. So that has to be 2 days in the future. So I divided into 3 groups. One is less than today, today and tomorrow, tomorrow, tomorrow and any after tomorrow. That is this is the 3 groups I have divided. Less than today. Less than today means less than today. This is the group. This group less than today that ends with 24 starts with unlimited. I do not know how many days before it can go. So this group lower boundary is unlimited. Lower boundary is unlimited. So that is out of scope. And upper boundary is 23. So 23rd November. That is the upper boundary. And lower boundary is out of scope. And this group is today and tomorrow. Today and tomorrow means today is 24, tomorrow is 25. So 24 and 25 November. And after tomorrow, in this group, the third group is any day above 25th. That starts with 26 and ends with infinity. So lower boundary is 26 and upper boundary is infinity. Lower boundary is 26th and upper boundary is out of scope. And upper boundary is out of scope. Here lower boundary is out of scope, and so this is lower boundary out of scope. Upper boundary is 23rd. This is lower boundary, this is upper boundary. This is lower boundary, this is upper boundary. Based on this requirement. So when I will try to create an order with this boundary, system will not allow me to create the order and testing pass. If I try to also create in this range, system will not allow me to create the order and testing pass. If it allows me, then testing fail. And here in this group, system will allow me to create order and then testing pass. If it doesn't allow, then testing fail. Now I will boundary testing. So I will be now let me go and try to create the request. So this is the web service. First I create the endpoint. Endpoint is this one. This endpoint doesn't have any parameter, so I can directly use it. And then method I will be choosing is post version is 1.1. Header I will be choosing this one. Header is this, and this one also. This is the value. And requested body text. This is the requested body. Requested body. Now I will be writing the name here, my name. MD Shahajada Imran, that is my name. I have written. Flight number is this one. Ticket number of tickets should be 2. Now this is the date. I'm hoping this is the month, this is the date. Now this for this group. For this group, lower boundary is out of scope, upper boundary is 23rd November. If 23rd November, so 11, 23rd, 11, 23rd. This one is, if I run the script, I am telling that, hey, API, take this information and create an order for me. API will say, I cannot create the order because the date has to be in the future. That is the expectation. If a system API will not be able to create the account. If it creates the account, then testing fail. If it doesn't create the account, I mean it doesn't create the order, then testing pass. The requirement is in this boundary. Upper boundary is 23rd, and I will try to create an order where upper boundary and system will not allow to create the order. Then only testing pass. If it allows, then testing fail. This is boundary testing that I am. This is the boundary testing that I am explaining. Boundary testing, that is what I am explaining. So now I will run it. Let me see what happens. Let's see what request I have sent. This is the method type, this is the endpoint, and this is the request header, and this is the body, where date is 23rd. Response, it says a flight date must be specific. It should be at least 24 hours from now. So that is the expectation that system will not allow me to create an order. Then testing pass. If it creates an order, if it allows to create an order, then testing fail. Now testing passes. Expectation was status code would be 400 and description would be bad request. That is the expectation. That is from this boundary. That is from this boundary. This boundary, I have tested this boundary. So this one is done. Now this boundary. This is also today and tomorrow. If I try to create an order on today or tomorrow, both cases system will not allow me to create the order, then testing pass. If it allows, then testing fail. So I will say today I will go with this one. I'll go with this one, 24. Today's 24 and run it. This time also system should not allow me to create the order. Then testing pass. If it allows, then testing fail. It did not allow. It is saying that it did not allow. Status code is 400 and description is bad request. So this one as expected. Now this one tomorrow. Tomorrow's date. Tomorrow's date also, if I try to create an order in tomorrow's date, system will not allow me to create the order. Tomorrow's date is 25th. 25th. Running the script. Response. Also, it is not allowing me to create the order. That is the expectation. Expectation is in this group, it will not allow me to create the order. If it doesn't allow me to create the order, then testing pass. If it allows, then testing fail. This is boundary testing. I'm checking each boundary. And now this one. If the date is 26, then system should allow. Then testing pass. If it doesn't allow, then testing fail. Now it should allow. If it allows the status code, if the status code is 200 and it allows, it creates the order, then testing pass. If it doesn't create the order, then testing fail. Status code is 400. The date I have chosen would be 25 11 2026. 25. Let me run it and see. System should allow this time. Status code is Status code is 200. This is just an example that how we can do it. It created the order. Basically, boundary testing means we will define the boundary and create test data for each boundary and validate the response. So this is the examples of boundary testing that I have explained. Now this one, manual testing is done. Manual testing is when the response, when API give me response, that response I will manually check. I will open the response, look at the response and check. And automation means I will make the script check the value, and I will also have parameterization. Delete everything. Now I will do this one. This one I will do automate a script with parameterization. Now let's say I have this Excel file. Excel file has this sheet. Excel file has this particular sheet 1, sheet 2, sheet 3. So sheet 2 has this column, departure city, arrival city, and then a API endpoint. And it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And this one has Sydney. So I have this Excel file, I have this sheet 2. Sheet 2 has this endpoint. This endpoint. This one. For this one, I have the endpoint. So I will test this particular endpoint with parameterization and checkpoint. So I need these things. I need the endpoint, method type, HTTP status code, and this one is not applicable for this particular. This one is not applicable for this particular endpoint. No, for this particular web service. I select this one. Select the method HTTP status code. Now I will go to the data and Excel. I just give a name, my Excel. And path I will be choosing. This is the path I have chosen, and I choose this one. Click on OK. Now this Excel information is showing up here. If we click on sheet 2 and move here, I will see the endpoint. I clicked on this request, HTTP request. I will be clicking here. First I delete this, whatever URL I have. Now I will be referring to this Excel sheet. So I'm clicking on this plus sign. Click on data source column. And this is the sheet 2. This is the sheet 2. And then REST API endpoint. Click on OK. And method type, I will be choosing get. This is the method type. And version is 1.1. Now if I click, now how many records are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Total 9 iterations here. 9. So I will choose the test flow. Here I will say 9. 9. Number of iterations is 9. So a script will run 9 one time but 9 iteration. In first iteration, a script will take this endpoint and send the request to the API. In the second iteration, a script will take this endpoint. In the third iteration, a script will take this endpoint, this endpoint. In the fourth iteration, a script will take this endpoint. In the same way, the ninth iteration, a script will take this endpoint. Let me see what happens. I will run the script. I'm telling the script to run 9 times, and I give a reference to this sheet, Excel spreadsheets, sheet number 2, and I choose a column, endpoint column. So a script will run 9 times. Different iteration will have different data. Let me run it and see what happens. A script ran 9 times with a script run 9 times, but I'll have to manually open. I'll have to manually, it is parameterized, and I will have to manually open. This is the response. If I go here, this is the response. So I did not put the checkpoint. Now I will put checkpoint. HTTP status code would be 200. That is the status code. No, version. First one is version, HTTP version. Version is 1.1. 1.1. This is the checkpoint I'm putting. So when the script execution ends, when the API send me response, the script will validate the response. Instead of I open the response and look at it and validate, a script will validate itself. And the status code, I'm choosing 200. Description, I'm choosing OK. Okay. Now I put checkpoint. 3 checkpoint I put. Now I will run the script again. This time also a script will run one time, but there will be 9 iterations. Each iteration, a script will have different set of data, and from different iteration will have different API. Now I'm running it. API endpoint. Let me see what happens. It failed on this particular iteration. Others it passes. So the script ran total 9 times. Iteration is 9. First 8 iterations it passes. The 9th iteration it failed. Bad request. Bad request. Let me see what information I sent. I sent Sydney to Sydney. Arrival city and departure city both are same. Therefore, this failure came. Others, for example, this one. This one, departure city is this one, arrival city is this one, different. So others are passes. The script ran one time, but there were 9 iterations. Different iterations has different endpoints. The last endpoint had the arrival city and departure city same. Therefore, this one failed. Now I will change that. I will open this file again, and this one has a Sydney and Sydney. So I will change it to something else. I will say London. London. Here I am saying London. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Actually, there are total 10 sets of data. This is one set of data, and this is the 10th set of data. And this one I changed from Sydney to London. This value I changed from Sydney to London. Here I changed Sydney to London. I save it. If I run it, I will increase the iteration from 9 to 10, because initially previously I counted wrong. I counted a 9. Actually, there are 10 rows of data. Actually, 10 rows of data, or 10 endpoints. These are endpoint 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now if I run it, a script will have 10 iterations, and different iteration will have different value. This time it failed. Why it failed? Sydney and Sydney. Let me see. Did I save it? Sydney and Sydney. Somehow it did. I forgot to save it, so I will change again. London. I changed from Sydney to London. Here also I will change from Sydney to London. London. Now I will save now. Probably previous time I didn't save, so I am saving it. I changed from Sydney to London. Here also I changed from Sydney to London. Now I will run, and hopefully this time it will pass all 10 times. Yes, it passes all 10 iterations. This iteration 10. This check mark means passes. The red color cross means failed. So all of these are passed. All of these are passed. And the checkpoint, I had 3 checkpoints: a status code, a description, a status description, and the HTTP version. So I have also showed this one hands-on. This one is another one. sheet 1 has two columns. This is one column. This is another column, column A, column B. This is the column header endpoint. This is the flight number. So these are the endpoints. It has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Total 15 endpoints or 15 URLs. There are total 15 endpoints. Each endpoint gets information of flight. So this endpoint get information about this particular flight. This endpoint gets information about this particular flight. This endpoint gets information about this particular flight. So this I will write automation script with parameterization so to test all of this. So I will change the endpoint, this one, this endpoint URL I changed. And I will go to the sheet 1 because that is in the sheet 1. If I go here, I will see that is in the sheet 1. This particular column or this particular endpoint list is in the sheet 1. So I will be choosing sheet 1 and then column name is REST API endpoint. REST API endpoint. I choose the column name, click on OK. So it got selected here. This is the endpoint I'm just checking. This is the endpoint. This is the web service that I'm checking, and this is positive testing. I will be checking for different flight numbers. So the operation is get, version is there, and these are the checkpoints. And I will be changing the iteration to 15. I've changed to 15 because there are total 15. There are total 15 endpoints in this column. Column that has this column header has total 15 endpoints. Each endpoint request to get information of different flight. Now that I change the iteration number, also change the endpoint or URL. Now I will run it. So a script will run one time, but there will be 15 iterations. Each iteration script will get information of a different flight. And the checkpoints are in place in the script, so a script will also validate the response for each iteration. So there are total 15 iterations, all iteration passes. These are the checkpoints. This is the response of the 15th. This is the response of the 15th iteration. Let's say I will say 10th. This is the response of the 10th iteration. Now I will give a invalid value. I will give it, this is negative testing. Negative test. I will give an invalid value. Let's say there is no flight with this flight number. There is no flight with this flight number. So if I run the script, there will be 15 iteration. The fourth iteration should fail and remaining iterations should pass. Fourth iteration should fail because the flight number I have given, that is invalid. the fourth iteration failed, and the remaining iterations passed. 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, all passes. Only fail. The red color cross means fail. The green color tick mark means pass. So this one failed, and the remainings are pass. This one failed because it failed. The checkpoint, the status code was expected 200, but actually came 400. Because of that, it failed. And why 400 came? Because the flight number I have given, that is invalid flight number. Now I can do a positive testing. I'll do a positive testing of, let's say there is a requirement that user should be able to send JSON request. There is a requirement that system should be able to send JSON request. No, the requirement is this particular API should accept JSON request and can process the JSON request and give the response. That is the requirement, let's say. And I will test. Well, I will show in another video. This is fine for today. I have explained everything that I planned to cover. I have explained everything. So thank you for very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much for attending this tutorial video.